This library packs a serious punch. It was created for sound designers like me, who need detailed, dry, high-quality sounds to design creatures for video games with. But recording animals for an entire library and getting them to sound this good is really, really hard, because we
not just want the sound, but want the sound at a level that it can feel like it's being recorded in an anechoic chamber. That adds to this challenge quite a bit.
Yet this is Mattia's 4th animal library, for which he recorded in 20 different locations around the globe. And I've got the opportunity to join him on his next recording trip at the Copenhagen Zoo. He's been there 8 times already, trying to capture hippo vocalizations, which are a core part of the library, but very rare and difficult to get. I'll be documenting the entire process from the recording session to the finished product and learn what it really takes to create a library like this. I'm on my way to the airport, about to hop on the train, and then afterwards hop on the plane, go to Denmark, to Copenhagen, and then from Copenhagen take the train over to Malmö. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. I have never done a proper zoo or wildlife recording that is meticulously planned and prepared for, and Mattia has such a richness and depth of experience in this field. Being able to experience it with him, it's gonna be great. And you never know what happens on a field recording trip, truly. There's too many unknowns, so it's gonna be exciting either way. If everything goes smooth, that'd be great. And if not, well, we'll have some interesting stories and lessons learned. Hey friends, it is nearly midnight here in Malmö. I have just arrived in the hotel. I have to get up really early tomorrow, 6 a.m. start, to get to the zoo as early as possible when there's as few people as possible. I'm very excited for tomorrow, but I'm gonna go to sleep now. It is 10 to 7 and I am currently on my way to meet Mattia. We're gonna meet up at the train station, and yeah, super excited. It's beautiful in the morning here in Malmö. Absolutely stunning views. Mattia, great to see you.
How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
I love your recording back. Thank you so much. Off to Denmark, right?
Yeah, that's right. You need the ticket, right?
So we're at Copenhagen Zoo now with Mattia Cellotto, and here's some camels. Let's go. The aim of the day is to record a bunch of hippos and any other big things that we want to record today.
Tasmanian devils, if we get lucky.
Nice.
A couple of cockatoos, perhaps.
Cool.
And then we go with the flow, because I mean, if we could get rhinos, that would be awesome, but I strongly doubt that.
Fantastic. And what's this setup?
Yes, so today we have something slightly different from the usual for me. The 8040s are part of the usual. They're kind of there for stereo image, just on the outside, and then on the inside here we have Avisoft CMPA for ultrasonics. Generally we have a Sanken CO100, but today I'm trying Austrian Audio CC8, which is a kind of small diaphragm cardioid mic, and an 8050 for safety, because that's my favorite mic that I built from, generally speaking. So that's what we got in here, and then in the backpack we have a sort of more portable version of that in case we can do a drop rig, which I doubt, but you know, we have it.
Sweet. So we'll be recording today and see what we get. Try and soak in all the knowledge as well and ask some questions while we're doing it. Very excited. So while we were chatting, we're walking from the start along this blue line towards the hippo enclosure. We want to get there as quickly as we can before the zoo gets too busy and while they're still active. As Mattia said, today's strategy is to target some specific animals
and then roam around the zoo and look for other opportunities. We're basically gonna repeat that process until we get lucky. So the red circled animals are our high priority ones that we really wanna try and get. The yellow ones are lower priority ones, but they are still on our little route that we will be doing throughout the day. Now back to the hippos.
Okay, so if nothing happened right away like that, then I just put my mic here and I start to set up the stand. As it is now, I would say they don't look the most awake. Also, it's the male that starts the conversation, so problem is I can't tell it apart. I think it's the one to the left here.
So the male starts the conversation, and then
Generally speaking, yeah.
the females reply.
Exactly, if they do at all.
Yeah.
The zebras have also been fairly active lately, but as you can see, this enclosure is a lot bigger, so it's a little bit harder. The hippos tend to be here at the edge of the water, so it's a little bit easier to kind of get an idea for what you could get. Also, one thing that I didn't mention is we also have an 8070 today here, so the long shotgun mic.
Oh.
And the idea with that one is, of course, to kind of gain the extra proximity and isolation.
Okay, so now you're setting up the shotgun mic.
Yeah, the 8070. So I've started already recording with everything else, but it's not well positioned. It's just there in case something goes off and we have it rather than not have it at all. But soon that will go on top here. And other than that, there's not much to it. It's just mostly kind of a waiting game. Every now and then I need to delete the files. Like, for example, this first one, currently we're recording 5 channels, but we're soon going to be recording 6 with the 8070. So we're just going to have to trash what we have so far, I assume, if nothing happens, and then go from there.
And you kind of then just chill here, watch the animals.
Yep, pretty much.
Nice.
Yeah, what we can do is also go into that area just to see if the birds are a little bit active, but just because we can keep an eye on the drop rig while we do that.
And I like that there's a couple of ducks chilling there as well.
There always are, yeah. Okay, that's good. So that's going 2 now. All right, so yes, now we can stop, activate channel number 6. Just for a second. I that take entirely. Ah, man. Okay. Oh well. Yeah. I got something here. Just check. It might be only clean at the beginning, but off axis. That is the ostrich call. Okay. I've never gone in it that close with that one, actually. Problem is it was off axis, but that's okay. You live, you learn. You never learn enough, though. I knew the second that I asked you if I could pass you the thing, I was like, I'm going to be too kind of cumbersome walking into its space. Like, if I already had it on my hand, I could have been like this, just kind of walking with like my hand in my pocket. I know it sounds stupid, but like, it's a different thing seeing like someone being like, oh, I'm dropping everything I'm doing to come closer to you. Yeah. It feels a lot more kind of weird to them, you know?
This is a perfect example of why it's so difficult to record animals. I wanted to share a little clip with you where me and Mattia were talking about this afterwards in the studio, and he shared some reflections as well as his approach for what he was trying to do in the moment and why.
It was also funny, yesterday we were trying to record the hippos, and then we had an ostrich come over and yell at us.
Yeah.
And then it went away again as we were trying to go over and capture it. So.
And we didn't check the content from that recording, but like I said, I ruined more than half of it for sure, right? Because it started vocalizing, and I thought to myself, well, the mics are there, but they're pointing the wrong way. It is a very deep sound, but if there's any high end, I'd rather it being on axis.
Yeah.
And instead of tilting the stand, I thought to myself, no, I can grab this, and somehow, even if I had the 80-70, I can somehow convince you to do something else, and then like we're gonna walk over there. And what resulted out of this was me picking up the recording at the end and taking a step that I think felt too abrupt, and the animal may have been done already or not, but it stopped vocalizing the second that we got a little bit closer. So that was a perfect example, which I did on purpose to look that dumb. No, no, but it's a perfect example of ruining a recording, because instead of being patient and kind of accepting, I was trying to record the hippos. This other animal started vocalizing. It's too soon to start a recording. And if I do try to start a recording, I will compromise probably 90% of it.
Yeah.
So I should just take it as is and then see if I can work with it, especially because some of the mics that are ultrasonic are Omni. The Sanken is Omni, the CMPA is Omni, so it doesn't make that much of a difference whether they're on axis. I mean, it does make some, but the animal was pointing at us, which is kind of quite important. So we had half of it. And me getting greedy contributed to a sound that will only be partly usable. And I think it's the story of animal recording for me, is always trying to understand how much can you push your luck? Because sometimes you have animals that are performing a beautiful sound, but you're like, oh, there's a bit of noise on the sides. There's a bit of a reverberation. If I could get 2 meters closer, this is like days of editing that I'm saving.
Yeah.
However, if you get nothing, I mean, you're saving a lot, but you're getting nothing.
Even more.
Yeah, so it's that kind of balance that you're constantly thinking about, where that ostrich like vocalizes quite rarely. It was hard for me to know how long it would be, how it would react to me walking towards it while it was vocalizing.
Yeah.
So I took a chance because I thought, I already have the distant version, and I could either be okay having a middle ground, or I wanted to upgrade directly to having the best possible version of that recording and never having to think I could still get something better than what I got.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is the way it is. All right, so we're good here. I would just say we set it off, and then we go take a quick look at the bird.
All right.
Just to gauge the situation. It feels like right now we have 2 out of 3 being a little bit sleepy. And I think it's one of the females that is active. So I'd say we move on to somewhere else.
Now that the rig was set up, we walked around to check out some of the other animals in the area.
Ah, okay. No, we can't go in here.
The ray.
Yeah. Is that how
it's
you
in
pronounce
heat.
it?
I don't know. I'm using my English skills and a lot of assumptions.
I know that the one that vocalizes has a green tag on it.
Uh-huh. I can see red and purple. Wait, is that a capybara?
Yes.
It's a capybara! That's cool. Oh, hello there. Hello, buddy. So this is a Kia.
Normally they make a sound that is a little bit more like a laughing kind of.
Turns out Mattia's impression was spot on. We had a chance to record it the next day, and this is what it sounds like. Then we went back to the hippos as it was their feeding time.
And you see where the lady is right now? That's exactly where the drop rig sometimes goes. You can see we have a visitor as well from the back.
just opens his mouth.
Oh yeah. They do that also to check the teeth, so they're trained to kind of open their mouths at the keepers even without the food. They just kind of get there and check that the teeth are clean and they, everything is in order, etc. So it's good now that there's a decent amount of apples in the water because it might push them back in the water.
Do they tend to vocalize more when they're in the water?
Yeah, I guess it's because you have two locations in the water here. You have the outside and the inside, and you go inside and outside through the water. And they tend to communicate, hey, I'm going back in, hey, we've just come out, etc. So most of the changes that occur in their location and needing to communicate to each other happen in the water. Only once they were outside, all in the corner there, and I thought to myself, well, it's not even worth turning the mic. Even though nothing was in the water, I was so sure that wouldn't happen. And then, of course, they called, and I felt so stupid for just leaving the mic pointing at still water, thinking, what were you going to get from that? Anyway.
So you've obviously learned a whole bunch about animal behavior and all of that stuff as well. How much of it do you read and research, and how much of it is learned through speaking to people versus just experiencing it here for yourself?
Yeah, I guess if you're doing long-term planning, what you'll want to do is look into seasonal behaviors generally for heat or things like those. But when it comes to the specificity of the animal at a certain place, etc., then you always want to talk to the keepers. Hippos may have, for example, mating seasonal behavior like rhinos, but if a rhino doesn't have a partner that is mating with at a zoo, then the fact that they may or may not be in heat doesn't necessarily affect vocalizations, etc. So the best bet is always to speak with the keepers because they are the ones that see them every day, and they know what they do, when they do it, and what kind of stimuli needs to be there for, for something to take place, and what should not be there for that to still take place. Because if you show up with this kind of, really big rig with the microphones and everything, you may throw them off, if that makes sense. The drinking sound of a hippo is disgusting, but it's so funny. And I have that from point blank from last time that I came. It's like, it's like they are choking.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it depends also on the personality of the animal, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. I'm not really sure how much it varies, if it's more personality-based or circumstance or whatnot. It's also based on the keepers, how hands-on they are. Some animals are almost trained to make sounds, but others not so much. So the one in the water right now seems to kind of be moving quite a lot when it kind of dips in and out very quickly. I mean, unless it's eating the apples and I'm kind of being misled. Yeah, I think that's what it's doing. But that's the kind of behavior you'd see before a call. Dip in and out, and generally water coming out of the nose kind of very quickly. That's generally a cue that maybe they're about to call.
In terms of gain staging, how do you do that?
You're recording at 32-bit, so you don't have to worry too much about it, but on both recorders, I guess you'll set the gain so that you're not really clipping even at 32-bit, but it depends on what you're recording. If you're recording hippos, you're gonna have to kind of crank the volume a little bit, but then if you're going to record the bird minutes after with the Avisoft is very ultrasonically focused. So you're probably gonna clip the bird if you're getting decent gain on the hippo. So it's more about normalizing things in post, since again with 32-bit you don't really have a problem with that.
Cool. And what's in this rig?
So in this one we have a couple of Trevino mics, lavaliers, an 8050 and a CMPA as well. So we still have stereo image, we still have ultrasonics, and we have an 8050 to kind of ground the center of the image. It's a more portable version of what we have in the other kit, I suppose. So yeah, this is a Zoom F6 and it has all the mics already connected, the USB kind of power and everything, and I can just close it after I turn it on, and I can control from the app whether I want to record or not, etc. I can't monitor back, but as you can see, we're not doing a whole lot of monitoring today, at least while we are kind of sitting still like this. The mic is not moving, it's pointed the right way, there's not much of a reason for things to go wrong, so to speak, and if they were to go wrong, it would be beyond our control, I guess. By the way, now that I'm kind of looking at the hippos, I realize that they're kind of all sleeping, so we're gonna have to move on, I think. Yeah, I think like we're not gonna get anything out of this for now. Which again is a little bit tricky because it means if it's not in the morning right now, it might just not happen today. But that's just the way it is. Again, like I think having come here now 10 times for this library alone, you have so many good days in the quantity that you're used to a day where you get nothing, and that's completely fine. The important thing is not to be hard-headed and kind of say, no, but if I stay here, will happen. Like they are sleeping. So whether you stay here, put the time in or not, it doesn't really matter. Sure, you could be there when they wake up, and maybe the first thing that they'll do is they get a little bit more, you know, in the mood is to vocalize, but how many hours is that? And what else could you be recording in the zoo? So I think it's a lot about going with the flow and kind of reading the room, so to speak. So the F8070 is gonna go now. This we only use in this circumstance because we want to try and get the extra distance on the hippos. Luckily, most of the other animals in the zoo we can get so close to that it doesn't make sense for the 8070 to be used. And so the stand doesn't need to be there either, of course, because the hippos tend to be quite static. So it's easy to say, oh, this is where we'll be facing. And even if you get it facing the wrong way, they're in the water kind of amplifies the sound a little bit. And generally speaking, it's not the most directional sound, meaning that it's really deep. And the kind of burst, the high frequency element comes from the nose. So it's not like a mouth kind of, you know, horizontally directed. It's more kind of vertically directed, so you're gonna pick it up no matter where you are.
So one thing that really surprised me actually was that when I listened to the sounds that you sent me, it was pretty impressive that so many of these animals, especially the birds, just make really weird sounds.
Yeah.
And I would never put like the sound to the animal.
Yeah, I know. They look as strange doing it as they sound doing it. You have like a range of cranes that will kind of look up and make these very brassy vocalizations. You have animals like the hornbill, which is very deep and has like this kind of bulging sphere at its neck level that I think it uses to amplify the sound. It's incredible, and I feel like that's why I insist on trying to get as much video as I can for this type of library, because you always want to showcase the animal in its entirety, since, well, in some cases you don't even know how long they're going to be around for, and it's just nice to kind of witness the full performance rather than just hear it, you know? So you also see what the look of the animal is, and some calls are territorial, some others are kind of mating calls, you know? It's nice to get the full spectrum of like the animal behavior, I suppose. It's very rare that you get the full spectrum, right? As in, generally speaking, if an animal doesn't like you, perhaps it growls at, say, like the brig or yourself, then you're not gonna get much out of that. You're gonna get that sound, and that's it. You're gonna get consistency and variations, but you're not gonna get, for example, the purring of a tiger if that same tiger really doesn't like you and feels that, you know, maybe scared by you and whatnot.
Yeah, it's not gonna go through all of its emotions and everything, right?
Yeah.
Basically, what Mattia is saying is that most animals produce a wide variety of different vocalizations based on certain factors. These can be roughly split into external and internal. Our goal is to capture as many of these as possible to get the entire range.
No luck? No,
No, I would say no.
not today.
We can go back to the hippos because we've done a little tour, and I really don't have high hopes for the hippos. I'm assuming we'll find them relaxing the way that we left them, and it hasn't been that long anyway. I don't think we need to walk any further to make an assessment of the situation over there.
For those, you can't really see it on video, but the hippos are very much chilling.
Yeah,
They are hard chilling.
they are professional chillers.
Yeah, in the sun, in the sand, enjoying their life. But we do have a curious ostrich.
Yeah.
We went closer, but unfortunately the ostrich was shy and left, so we paid the Tasmanian devils a visit instead.
So here's a little Tasmanian devil, and you just said basically you need 2 of them and they scream at each other, and that's how you get vocalizations.
I feel like that's it as far as my experience with them goes. It's fairly straightforward. They
Nice.
kind of like go around in paths, and if they happen to walk on the same path, I don't know if it's the season or what, but like, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. The problem is they are screaming into each other's mouths, so you have resonances and you have overlapping, and they're not super smooth. But I mean, sometimes it's just like that, and perhaps you can still work it into a single animal sound. That was one of the cleanest takes that I've gotten out of them.
We got it. We got it. Another interesting thing that you said before, which I want to touch upon again, is the fact that you'd rather get 5 seconds of close-up than a minute of far away.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what sets apart what I make from most other libraries, or at least I hope so. It all ties into trying to get the cleanest sound that you can, which means proximity, which means, ideally not a whole lot of background noise, etc.
Yeah.
And some of these things you can fix in post. But I think if you don't have the proximity, then you're just really working against the idea. Some calls, maybe like, the ostrich call that we heard in the morning, it's mostly bass driven. Perhaps it's rare enough on a recorded format that even if it doesn't have a whole lot of highs and it doesn't like pitch super well, it still works because it's such a deep sound to start from that after you pitch it by more than 6 semitones, you're gonna go for like diminishing returns.
Yeah.
But in the case of something like a Tasmanian devil, etc., then you of course want the pitching element, and the on-axis factor matters, the distance matters, the fact that maybe you're using a blimp or that cat on top of the blimp might matter. So I'm kind of wary of all of these things as I go through the zoo, and I try to kind of go for the animals that give me the highest chance at proximity over animals that maybe could be a little bit easier to record but are going to be in a super large enclosure where you're going to have a distance issue.
That's interesting, and I guess essentially with then the hyperrealism aspect of it, it's really proximity, and that proximity also gives you detail and high frequency, right? And so
Yeah.
the high frequency is a huge component of it, especially for the pitching and manipulation of it.
Exactly, yeah. Sometimes you can tell when an animal goes off axis, even if you're just hearing it back in the reprocession, and even if it was a point blank from a distance standpoint, So it's kind of, I think, something that I really consider strongly because just because you're using an ultrasonic mic, it doesn't mean that the ultrasonic content comes for free.
Yeah.
And you have ultrasonic pollution also in that domain, which means you need to work against like the issues that your pre's may have and things like those. And it's not great, but like for birds, it works like a charm because the signal to noise ratio there is so in favor of the signal.
Yeah.
But for other animals, not so much. And so you have to make up for that with the proximity. And then you
Gotcha.
can kind of skew the spectrum to feel a certain way. For birds, if anything, you have to do the opposite. You kind of high pass almost the entirety of maybe a 100K signal, as in San Cancio 100K, and then you only hear the maybe 8050 or something that is a little bit more center focused in terms of like spectrum. Not that the 8050 isn't skewed towards highs, but it has a bit of a smile EQ applied in its frequency response, which I kind of like, whereas the Sanken is a little bit more like, yeah, the highs are really skewed and you can really get a strong feel. And if you pair that with the CMPA, which is also pretty much only ultrasonics and anything above 1K super kind of boosted, then if you hear everything back and post, everything feels still kind of like thinny and harsh and like really bad. So yeah, you want it, but you want it with moderation and you want it for pitching purposes. It doesn't mean that you need to be deafened by 10K signal in real time when you're listening to the sound as you recorded it.
Yeah. And do you apply any type of processing on the initial recording chain? So like, do you have any compression or limiters or anything on your mix pre?
No, not of that kind, no.
Okay.
The only thing that comes in bulk with any recording would be the denoising phase.
Yeah.
So that one is just kind of mandatory, no way around it. Even if I've recorded something in a pretty much recording studio, like if someone brought in like their dog or whatever else, I still do it because of like I said, the praise or maybe the self noise of the mic may have ultrasonic issues.
Yeah.
So at the very least, you need to do an ultrasonic denoise pass.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think I try to just keep the signal as clean as possible. And that's why I like the 32-bit concept as well. Is that I don't risk clipping.
Yeah.
And yes, there's some cons to like potential multiple gain staging of different pre's that the mics could be going through and switching in real time and things like those. But at least for me, it's always been worth it over the potential hustle of having to kind of check the signal and risk clipping, etc. Especially like, today we've recorded on a couple of birds and you could hear like the gray parrot almost clipping my mics at analog level.
Yeah.
While trying to record another bird.
Yeah, those birds were crazy loud, those parrots, yeah.
Yeah. In this case, we're using the gun range feature of the headphones. I'm not monitoring, I'm just protecting myself.
I felt my eardrums being like, woo!
Yeah, right. It's weird when you feel it in real life.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's awesome when you feel it for like lions and things like those, where you're like, wow, I can see why this is incredibly scary. All right, well, it seems like there's not a whole lot of action with these guys either today.
We spent the rest of the day patrolling around the zoo looking for opportunities. Sometimes we got lucky, other times not so much. I've condensed this into a minute or so, but we spent multiple hours in total standing around with little to show for it.
Yeah, maybe I'll keep it a little bit further away because it seems like they are interested, but they're also scared of it.
I'm at the hotel again now. I am absolutely exhausted. I have hit a wall. It was an incredible day. I learned so much and gained huge respect for anyone who tries to make animal sound libraries and record animals in general, because they are incredibly tricky to record. Most of the time you're just standing there hoping that they will make a sound, and a lot of the times they just won't. I learned a whole bunch of things.
What I learned is that being patient is one of the most important parts of the process. I wanted to know how Mattia is able to remain patient for such long stretches at a time, and he shared a great story with me when we had a conversation at his studio.
When it comes to like the patience and that kind of thing, as you were asking me, I think one of the things that I remember from my childhood enjoying the most is going fishing with my dad. Mm-hmm. And it's a whole lot of nothing, really, right? But there's that kind of feeling of hope that you get. Now, you know, you're looking at kind of the what do you call it, the floaty bit, you know, and you're just kind of waiting for it to go under, and you're not really sure if just because it goes under doesn't mean that it will actually result in you know, getting a fish. And it's the same kind of feeling. Like it's, to me, it's relaxing. It makes me feel a bit like I shouldn't talk. I should just be there. And in an ideal scenario, you know, the animal is not really feeling your presence to that extent. And so it really helps you kind of blend in and not really be focused on wanting the sound. At least like now that I'm an adult, I have less of an expectation when I go there, and you know, it's not like fishing as a kid. I'm more like turn on the mic, point it, hope for the best, and use my logic to kind of think, how long should we stay here in this situation? You know, animals, they are unpredictable to an extent, but as we've seen yesterday with the hippos, if they are lying down that way, especially, you know, their rhythms, they are not like, I don't know, birds that maybe will just kind of seemingly be sleeping for 10 minutes, but then they might be up again, etc. And again, not every bird will behave that way, but generally the rhythm of birds compared to the one of hippos is different. So if you see them sleeping, then you know that perhaps you should move on, and so on and so forth. So generally speaking, for me, like waiting is not the problem. It's more about knowing when to quit, you know, and choosing my battles so that I'm committing to the right animal at that right time, if that makes sense.
Morning, it's like 6:50 and I'm heading for breakfast again, then going to meet up with Mattia and head to the zoo again for the second recording day. Similar plan to last time, roam around, try to get all the animals possible, and hope for success.
Oh, you're awesome! Yes. Boom!
Success! We got
You got that on camera too? Yeah, that was one of the better takes.
Our tenacity was rewarded and we finally got lucky. After a successful start to the day, we were feeling great and immediately went on the hunt for the next opportunity.
So these are Kia birds, and we just captured some really good sounds from them right up close. They're very talkative today. Today is an incredibly lucky day. Day one was not as easy as this. This is like animals are performing. They're choosing to make some sounds. And you can hear the sea lions next door. It's around 3 p.m. and I am back again from the zoo. Today was a really, really successful recording day, which was fantastic. The animals were on form and were performing really, really well. You never know with this kind of stuff. And it was interesting going for a second day, as the first time we did get some great stuff. But I feel like today we were really lucky, especially with the hippos, to get them right at the start and get such a clean, great vocalization. And catch it on camera as well. That was really cool. And really excited to put this whole video together as well. It's going to be good. Hello, I am about to go to breakfast and afterwards Mattia's house, where I will be looking behind the scenes into the design process, into the editing process, into the cleanup process, all of that stuff, all the processes that happen after recording essentially. Yesterday I had a pretty rushed breakfast, so I'm really excited today to take my time and actually eat some good food, because this breakfast is insane. So, please run us through your setup.
In here, we're just mostly talking about mics. You've seen the Mix Pre-10 2. We have the 8040s, as I kind of mentioned yesterday. They're in just this XY-ish position. Not really XY, it's more like if I imagine myself a meter away from the target that I'm trying to record, that's where I'm pointing all of the mics. And then I do need an excessively large stereo image, excessively wide stereo image, so that's what I try to do. This also helps me in case I'm slightly off axis and the animal moves quickly. It is possible that one of these 8040s becomes the center of the image, and then the 8050 that is inside becomes either the left or right, and the other one outside the other channel, if that makes sense. So yeah, we have everything in the blimp here, or better, we have 3 mics for center image. I'll just try to take this out the best that I can. Okay, so Avisoft CMPA here. It records up to 200 Ks. Of course, we're recording at 192, so we're not making full use of the mic in this case. You'd need a special recorder, which I used to use. CMPA here, which takes care of sunken duties, just because I wanted to try this Austrian Audio CC8 mic in place of my usual sunken CO100. So my standard setup always features the CO100 at the place of this. And then the 8050. Now, generally, when we go in a session and we're gonna start building the final sound from the ground up, the ground generally is the 8050, both because it's the most directional of the bunch, so it can give me the most isolated sound in case we're indoors, in case we have contamination of the soundscape from the sides and whatnot. And generally, it kind of helps me understand this is the best version of the sound that I wanted to get. Then all the other mics can add, of course, the 8040s will add a stereo image, and ideally the sunken CO100 and the CMPA will add the top end or the ultrasonic end over it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that these should take the foreground in the soundscape, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So these are essentially like layers, and then this is our core.
Exactly, yeah.
Ideally.
Yeah. It's very rare that this is not the core.
Yeah.
When it does happen, it's because sometimes the sunken, being omni and getting a little bit more reflections, like environmental reflections, sometimes if the reflections are just right, it feels like it has more body without necessarily feeling like it's more reverberant, so to speak. That's it.
Awesome.
Yeah, easy peasy.
I love that you have the colored cables, so you know which ones. Of course, on the other end of them, it's the same. Do you have your predefined channels that they go into?
Generally, yes. Okay. Yeah, so I'll have 1, 2, left, right, then the center 80-50. And then, yeah, these two I always get swapped. So that's the part where every time I need to kind of open up and be like, I guess sunken number 4 and the other one number 5. And then, just, yeah, it's not that predefined, but up until channel number 3 it sort of is, I guess.
Awesome. Nice.
This thing here has like a little bit of foam, so we try to reduce a little bit of a, mechanical transmission and that kind of thing.
You also have a second rig.
Yes.
Is that your drop rig primarily?
Yeah, and that said, I don't do drop rigs much because of what we just talked about. It's Animal Hyperrealism. It's supposed to be on axis on both ends, animal looking at the mic and mic looking at the animal ideally. And this is, again, all ideal. But in certain circumstances, if you want proximity, you can't get the whole rig. In other cases, you are just not allowed to bring something that big. And I mean, when I say that big, I mean not just the mics, but the mix pre-attached. And the human being that comes with it in the same space with an animal, right? This may have to do with the way that the animal reacts to the whole ensemble. It may have had to do with, it can really be a bunch of factors. But the moral of the story with regards to the drop rig here is it came to mind because where we went yesterday, I used to have a connection there for recording hippos, and I used to be able to drop D100, Sony D100, to try and capture the sound slightly closer to where we try to get them from. So from 15 meters of distance, which is public access, to something more like 4 meters of distance. And it worked with the D100. However, the D100 has its limits, meaning that if you're coming from having such a modular setup with, one mic for the center for this, the other ones for that, etc., then you feel like you're still potentially not fully satisfied with only 2 mics, especially because you want to have those roles. And if all of a sudden you're trying to stack a copy-paste version of these items to say, okay, this one I'll treat as if it was a Sanken. I'll try to see if I can boost the ultrasonic spectrum without boosting the noisy part of it. It gets tricky because this microphone, at least the built-in ones of the D100, are not the same as a Sanken, of course. So moral of the story, this is what the purpose of this setup was. Now, this will look ugly, okay? Yeah. But the idea is, if we look at it from here, I suppose.
Bring this slightly closer.
Yeah, sure. So here you have an F6, so Zoom F6, and you have just battery block powering it. And then you have a bunch of XLRs going into, I'll just try to open this without destroying it entirely. But so you have a CMPA as well. So again, we still have our ultrasonic response here that is extended, let's say. And I say extended because the 8050 is here as well. And it's still kind of ultrasonic, but not to the same extent. So this is the center image, so 2 mics instead of 3 of the full setup, but they still kind of serve the purpose. And here we have a couple of Crister Vino mics.
These are tiny, tiny mics.
Yeah, which have been modded to kind of be a little bit shorter, and most importantly to have a low profile XLR on the sides, because as you may have noticed, all of this barely fits inside of the Rycote blimp, but it does. So when I get on location, I turn this on, I connect it to my phone, and then I can determine when I want and don't want to be recording. The battery life of this whole thing is about 7 hours, and the SD card allows me to record for longer than that. So it will die before it gets to full memory. So that's kind of the idea. It took a long time to put this together. This was a bit of a rabbit hole. I'm not really sure if it will have a place in my rig in the long term.
Thank you for taking it out of the blimp as well. I know how hard it is to get back in, so I appreciate it. Then lastly, if the distance isn't right, you've also got a huge shotgun mic.
Yes, I mean, this is only used for the hippos, only in the context that we tried using it yesterday. So it's an 8070 from Sennheiser. The idea is this is used for, recording soccer matches to, say, for example, capture the sound of the net or, and whatnot. I wouldn't define it as an extra reach because technically it's more about reducing the noise from the sides and being a little bit more center focused.
Cool. Well, that is, I think, the main rundown of the rig. In that case, let's jump into the DAW and listen to some of the files that we captured.
Sounds good. All right, so we got yesterday's files from the mix pre. We didn't really get much from the F6 because we didn't do a drop rig. So we're just dropping them here. We're not copying them over to the session. They are just in a place where I'm not gonna lose them. And here I'm gonna separate them by 2 minutes so that I have some space between them, so to speak. And then let's just go through some of the content sort of at random and then pick a moment that we would want to clean up, let's say. Normally I would go through all of this and drop markers and say this is that, etc. and then just kind of go from there. But for now, let's just do a browse at random of the waveforms that are already loaded and what looks promising like this. You can remember that moment. It was when they went back inside.
That's incredible.
I think the first sound that we heard maybe is a good one. That was not the first one, but it is the best one. So let's just drop a marker here. Let's just crop this part and act as if we were going to edit a whole bunch of these. I mean, generally speaking, I don't edit a lot more than, say, 5 or 6 vocalizations at once for kind of practical reasons. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna create 4 channels and a parent, like so. I'm gonna drop this down, and there's gonna be a number of things that I will do through Stream Deck, such as splitting a multi-channel file like so. So now we're gonna have left and right, center, so 80/50, and then I think this is gonna be the CC8, and this is gonna be the CMPA. And again, it looks clipped, but of course we worked at 32-bit, so
nice.
It isn't.
For anyone who doesn't know, side note, the Stream Deck is essentially a macro pad that allows you to assign different keyboard shortcuts, Reaper actions, etc. So in this case, Mattia can press the button and then we immediately get the full explosion or whatever it's called.
Exactly. Expansion, explosion.
Yeah.
I think you also say explode, yeah. Explode channels.
Explode takes, explode channels, yeah, something like that.
So now we're here. We have a decent kind of look on where the signal is, so to speak, meaning our items have enough volume that we can tell signal apart from. Now, the important thing for me, generally speaking, at this stage, is to have a good chunk of the noise that I intend to remove at the end of the file. This is the first thing that I'll do, will be denoising. This is pretty good, except there's just a vocalization at the end. Okay, there's just a little mumble, but for the most part, it's just noise, let's say. So I'm gonna glue these together, group them, and open them in an external editor, like so. We can take a look at the content just at first sight. We're gonna have, let's see, this one is gonna be our 8050. Then we have our CMPA. And the CMPA, as you can see, below 1K, not that usable, right? Because you have all of this kind of self-noise, which is not just persistent noise, but rather like a ticking kind of sound. If we compare it in the higher end of the spectrum to the 8050, then we can see where we're making our gains. Then we have the 8040s on the sides, and here we have the CC8, which doesn't have as much of an extended response as the 8050, but we can kind of take a look and see what it could be bringing, because as you can see, seems to have slightly more content around the 10 to 15K. We may or may not want it, but that's the idea, always having the choice. Mm-hmm. So now I'm gonna press a button and we're gonna get a coffee. Now the button is a button that activates a big macro that I made for denoising this type of file. So we'll go through standard denoising, and what it's doing now is using a curve to do ultrasonic denoise. Then it will tab over to the next file and pick something from there too, and then do the same here. In this case, I tried to do ultrasonic denoising, but the 8050 didn't have much. And I'll just kind of keep on going like that until it's eventually done. This is one of the things that I had to automate, and it took me a long time to automate, but now looking back, I feel pretty satisfied that it worked out that way. The macro is sort of looking for items on screen because RX doesn't expose all of the screens that it can pop up at runtime, such as this one, for example. And here we are. The only thing that I'm going to check is the 8050. Something seems to have gone wrong in this part. It can happen from time to time because you're automating, so a bit of a kind of loss at that point, but what should have happened is this. I think it just failed to train correctly. And at this point, I'm just going to do it manually, and that's that. Okay, now ideally we have gotten rid of our base noise. And again, these are settings that I use so often that I've grown to trust. So I'm just going to work with these based on how much signal I think I got. If I thought that this was a very problematic file, I would probably look into it a little bit more because I'd need to be a little bit more heavy-handed, and I'd risk losing a little bit too much signal in the process of getting rid of the noise. So of course here we can already see we have low-end problems. On this mic, the CMPA, we can straight up high pass. So that's what I did just now. The 8040s, I'm gonna high pass at 100 Hertz and just kind of see what they look like, a bit of a before and after. I could do it again, or I could kind of raise the bar a little bit. I'm just gonna do it again for now and then see what the collapsed file looks like. Again, high passing at about 100, and I can see there's leftover problems, same here, but I want to have a global vision of what this looks like at this stage. So we haven't pressed play yet, again, because I want to preserve my hearing, and these issues that we looked at so far are issues that we don't need to hear. We see them, we can trust that, you know, the spectrum is telling us the right thing, and we're working on headphones. These are low frequencies, we may not be able to catch them. I'm gonna start to kind of use a second set of Stream Deck shortcuts, and what you'll see me use a lot of time is a spectral repair based on what is to the left, what is to the right, what is above, and what is below. So if I need to, for example, fix an issue that, in this case, I don't really think that I need to fix this type of ring because it looks like it would be barely audible. However, if I was to try and do it, I could try and either fix it based on what is below, like so, and it would pretty much go away. Fix it based on what is above, and it would lead to the same outcome. But if I try to fix it based on what is to the left, it would sort of stay because what is to the left is a good chunk of signal. So in this case, I see that we have a lot of these instances. So perhaps what I can do is just kind of try and deselect the part that I'm not interested in and use deconstruct to remove the tonal elements, should it pick them up, because deconstruct tends to be more sensitive to tonal elements at lower frequencies. But I'm just gonna try my luck. Here we're sort of wasting time really with regards to cleaning up the file, meaning that this is not gonna be a problem. But again, most of it is in the ultrasonic spectrum, if not all of it.
Could you quickly touch on what deconstruct does?
Yes, so deconstruct will just kind of pick up the source file and try to split it in the tonal elements, the noisy elements, and if you want, it will separate the transients as well.
Okay.
So you can preserve any extent of whichever ones of these you want, and you can kind of skew it to consider something more likely noise, more likely tone. So the first part of this file, I'm not so sure we'll want to use, because this part here is just kind of off-axis and pretty far, so as a result it's quite verby. But this part here, that's pretty good. Again, I don't think I necessarily hear a click, but I see one here. I don't think it's connected to the voice of the animal because the rest of the sound of the animal is not modulated by this thing here. So I'm just gonna de-click and hopefully it goes away, there we go. And then there's just kind of like sometimes cleanup that I do for the sake of cleanup. Like here, I just kind of want to get rid of this little bit of noise because I don't know how it will look like when I slow it down. And then I am assuming that this chunk here is probably like low end that could just pop up when we, should we decide to, for example, compress the sound in a design phase and whatnot. So I'm gonna spectral repair to the left and just kind of get rid of some of it. And here I'm reminded that I did leave some of the low end that I don't think is, again, related to the signal, meaning if we look at this low end, it doesn't seem to correlate to the modulation of the sound made by the animal, so we may as well get rid of it, because even if it did add low end presence, it would be just kind of persistent and not related to the sound we have. Now here, we actually have the first real problem that we can hear, which is just a bit of a tick of the squabble. So we're gonna try and use the declicker. That's okay, it just leaves us with this kind of woody bump that we can get rid of too. We know that this low end here again is not related to the signal, so we can spectral repair based on what is above. And here, in the tail of the sound, there's just a little bit of what I would define as like a fizzy element to it, meaning that you can hear the sum of all of these kind of quick clicks and like bursts of high frequencies. I think they were on some hay or something like that, moving this this vegetation as well, or dry leaves or whatever these are. And in this case, again, this is the fundamental of the sound. So there's no like chirping or anything like that. So everything that I see that sort of looks like a click, like in this area, it probably is a click. And although right now we're monitoring pretty low, as I would at this stage of the process, I'm not hearing them, but it doesn't mean that someone is not gonna pick them up as soon as they boost the sound. If you can see it, I mean, eventually you're gonna hear it. Doesn't matter, you know, you're just gonna have to crank it, but at some point you're gonna hear it. So I'd rather that the sound is just ready for that process, if that makes sense. So far we're hearing sort of like a sum of the signal, but it's a skewed sum, meaning that maybe the 8050 doesn't have that principal role that it will have in the final file. So we're taking this with a pinch of salt as we fix issues. And this, there is a chance that we can recover the 1, 2, 3 chirps at the end. I don't think we can recover this. It's just lacking too much definition, I suppose, and it's too much of a long sound to actually try and fix it in its entirety. So I think we can leave this for now, move on to the DAW, hear what the sound is as it stands, and then move on from there. The first thing that I'll do is I'll just dim the CMPA. Oops, I need to do this. Okay, so I want to kind of dim the CMPA because it's a sharp sound as it is. So I don't want it to be deafening. And already give the 8050 its usual role. Here we would normally name these, but again, because I always work with the same mics, if anything, I'm just gonna remind myself that this is a CC8 and not sunken. So if I slow this down, it's not gonna give me the definition. Let's take a listen to the whole thing and let's skip the beginning because again, we're not gonna use that part. There is a chance we could actually fix this. Anyway, the kind of leafy elements that we removed from this end, you can still hear here. Mm-hmm. But let's just worry about things one at a time. So I guess for this sound, we're not gonna have to struggle much to get this right. I just kind of want to fix that a bit. Want to check if ultrasonically speaking we have any issues. So I'm gonna slow it down to see if there's any problem and to hear how cool or not cool it is. That's the whole point, right? Like the whole point of this is to get this type of sound when you slow it down.
That's incredible.
So
absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's quite nice. Normally you don't get this type of rolling R from baboons, or at least not in my experience. But this was an adult one screaming. The one that follows this one was the baby or the smaller one. So kind of interesting to hear the difference. The only thing that I would say is at the very attack of the sound, I have a problem with how roomy it suddenly gets. It's just a brief moment. but it does that. So perhaps we can try and use something like the room for just this brief moment. I'm just gonna try and find the mic that is most affected by this problem, so that we're gonna try and fix that problem on that mic first. I think this is kind of it for me. It could be fixed a number of ways. We could try and use a soothe to try and remove some of that tonality. And when I say that I have a problem with the sound, I kind of want to be clear about where I think the problem is. So I'm just gonna loop this and try and explain it. Kind of in this area. That's what I feel is the problem. And maybe, I don't really know if there's a, I don't think there's a problem in the lower octave from that. So I don't want to dim it outright because there is dry signal in that and it will give me the nice initial body of the sound. It's the beginning of the scream. I don't want to lose it and I want it to make it feel like it's coming from within, so to speak. So let's try with the room. So I'm gonna put it on the track first and then I might just remove it. And we're gonna have to be quite careful about how much we remove, but let's see. For now, I don't hear a whole lot of difference. I'm just gonna bring this back up to remind myself. Okay, so we are at 760 in terms of frequency of the issue. So I'm just gonna try and get into that area. And I'm gonna lower the sensitivity of the room in that area. And I'm gonna try and increase it. So it's just that kind of like pulse type of sound that I want to get rid of. It's kind of funny how it doesn't always act the same way. Yeah. Anyway, I think that may already be enough as far as I'm concerned. I kind of want to check if I find it as problematic on the others. The CMPA will not be affected because we high-passed it quite a bit. But if we compare this to this, there's just a slight difference. I think I'd like to keep it. Okay, now, I'm copying it over like this, but realistically, this is what I want to do. I just want to drop it on the item because I don't want the rest of the file or any other file on that track to be affected. So here we go. And I don't think that the 8040s are affected as much. So yeah, we could go a little bit more nuts with regards to try and remove some of the reverberation elements, but I don't think it's quite necessary for this sound. Now I just mostly kind of want to mute the CC8, I want to mute the CMPA, remind myself what the base of the sound is, and figure out if it's lacking a bit of body. It's a screeching sound, so it's going to be a little bit hard to try and give it a body when realistically it's all in the higher end of the spectrum. But let's just take a quick listen. So I might want to drop recenter on this track. And in this case, I just kind of want it to be on the whole track, just in case. And it's mostly because I feel like the signal right now is left focus. Mm-hmm.
Anyone who doesn't know what recenter does, it takes a skewed stereo image and evens it out as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, exactly. And then with the multiband, as far as I know, it tries to kind of do that in a multiband fashion so that it's not snapping the whole spectrum left and right based on very quick changes in phase and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So together, now it feels quite centered. Without this, it just feels a little bit like it's all the way to the left. And again, it doesn't need to be super wide. It's an animal, right? So now I'm gonna see what this adds. So it feels like it adds a little bit of presence. Like I feel like without it, the sound feels slightly more indirect. And with it, I feel like there's a bit more definition. So I don't hate it, and then we add this. It's weird how it's not that noticeable. but there's a lot of kind of high frequencies being added. One thing that I want to try at this stage is to phase align the mics, because I've never used the CC8 before, and generally speaking, I feel like the mics benefit from being aligned. Maybe we don't necessarily have to do it with the 8040, but we're gonna try. I normally have the signal being sent from the 8050 to all the other mics, and in this case, I mean, I would normally do it over the course of 3 or 4 vocalizations, but in this case, we only have one. So I'm gonna loop this until I see that the difference is locked in. Let's just say that that's it. And then I'm gonna correct. So now all of a sudden we're clipping. Maybe we were clipping before already, but now we are definitely clipping in an audible fashion. So I'm gonna put Pro L here, not because I wanted to fix the problem, but rather because I want to see by how much we're clipping. So it's about like 2 dBs and a half, maybe three I would say. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then just some change. Okay, so the whole point of aligning to me is that we're trying to improve our signal to noise ratio, so to speak. And if the sound doesn't feel worse as a result, then we have succeeded. If I bypass everything, which means we're bypassing the volume adjustment as well as the recenter and the phase alignment, then we have this sound. And with everything, we have a sound that feels to me like is more direct, less roomy, however, perhaps just a little bit less present in the mids, meaning that it's starting to really skew towards high frequencies. I don't mind that, but I want to try and bring some body back. So I want to see which mic is more apt for that. I suppose that the CC8 could try and help with that. We could try a number of things here. Maybe realistically what we should try first is just to dim the highs rather than doing additive EQing. And is the problem throughout the file, or is it just on this section? Because I think it's mostly that, right? So perhaps we can drop a Pro Q here and just try and see if we have... I don't really want to use a high shelf because of the ultrasonic spectrum. So I'm just going to use a bell that has fairly wide Q, and I'm going to use a dynamic range like so to try and dim some of the signal.
So the dynamic range EQ, essentially, if the frequency goes up, then it will bring it down without just bringing the whole signal down, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of like multiband compression, I suppose. In this case, you're trying to kind of dim the sound as it gets past a certain threshold, and the maximum that it will ever be dimmed in this case is 5 dBs and a half. And you can see here, it kind of acts mostly at the beginning and not so much towards the end.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and see how this feels. Again, it's a bit strange to focus so much on one file, because I think if we had quite a few, we would just kind of go over all of the takes and worry about them individually. In this case, I kind of want to get this as good as it can be, but yeah, I'm losing perspective quite quickly because we are focusing exclusively on the one sound, right? If this was like a normal session with me being alone, I'd drop it, meaning I'd be like happy with where it is, and then I'll leave it for either the next day or the one after to reevaluate and kind of decide whether it's actually good enough.
Thank you so much for the rundown. That is a huge knowledge drop, really, and absolutely impressive how fast you work. I was blown away. So yeah,
it's also a lot of like, it still takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
This is one sound.
It's
But you try to get to get faster so you can go deeper quicker, if that makes sense. Yeah, in this case we didn't have to go like deep into the kind of necromancing side of like, you know, RX, where you're like, okay, we have none of the signal and we're gonna have to just resuscitate it and somehow exactly. That's the harder stuff where you spend half a day thinking, I should probably let this go. You know? But sometimes with animals, you get one shot and then if you let go, it means you haven't recorded
Yeah.
it, and that the time is not coming back.
Yeah.
However, it's a balance of also understanding, okay, I need to let this go because yes, the time is not coming back, and the more I try to bring this back, the more I realize that it's just not gonna happen.
Sunk cost, yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome.
We can go through a little bit of a breakdown of the animals that I've already recorded from the session. It's not a done deal, so what you hear now doesn't necessarily mean that it will be exactly as it will be in the library, but I just kind of want to showcase the finished product, so to speak.
This is the hours of editing later.
Exactly, yeah. There's sometimes a little bit of a rexing that is done even after the exporting stage in Reaper. Okay, so here we have a northern bald ibis, and this is what it sounds like in real time. So it's kind of like an interesting, to me, Daffy Duck type of sound. I'm referring to the Daffy Duck sound that it had in Italy. I'm not 100% sure what Daffy Duck sounds like.
Kind of cute though.
I just wanted to start from here because it was one of those sounds that in real time sounds cute, like you said, and inoffensive. But the whole point of the library is to feel hyper-realistic and give you the chance to play with it. So if we slow it down to quarter speed, all of a sudden you have this almost a demon-like element.
Wow.
This is, 0.15 speed.
Yeah. Slap some OTT on it.
So it's kind of nice that you can play with it to this extent. Then we have a number of vultures, in this case a palm nut vulture, for example. It made a number of strange screeches and grunts. And this is the kind of sound that also pitches quite well.
Wow.
It can be a little bit more dragon-oriented, perhaps. That kind of sustained tonality that still feels almost screamed. And of course, you wouldn't necessarily use the whole thing, but if you pick the sustained part, you can take it to a number of places, I suppose. This one was kind of funny because when it really went for the higher volume vocalizations, it sort of locked itself into a brief moment in which it was almost a pure sine wave. This is unedited. I mean, you can see the edit, but the edit is just because I need to dim this sound at this point in time, but it's kind of strange how precise that feels in real time. It almost feels like a censorship moment in the vocalization. Then when you slow it down, all of a sudden you can hear that there's modulation to it, which is something that I love about birds. The fact that so much of what they do to us is not perceivable because, we don't have that kind of processor.
Yeah.
But the way that they kind of modulate their voices so quickly is so interesting. This is a crested caracara. Bring it down. It's kind of funny how it feels like typing.
It's so interesting the way it bounces.
Yeah, yeah. And here you can see some of the kind of brutal editing that sometimes you do to make sure that the dry signal stays kind of more relevant to the inflections. And again, this is always a matter of massaging the sound in a way that doesn't feel like you're gating the entire thing. So this is a moorpork owl. I'm not 100% sure if I'm pronouncing that right. So it's kind of like a shrilling type of sound.
Unbelievable.
So also kind of funny, if you Doppler this, probably it could be like a little siren, and you could even have it on board. Like each one of them is long enough that you could probably loop it and have it on a siren if you needed it. If you decided to enhance the gritty part of it, it could be sort of like a serious thing, but it's just funky to think about what you could use this type of sound for, because so many of them lend themselves to more than just animal design or creature design.
I feel like just listening to these, there are so many ideas that come to mind immediately. And of course, Ben Burtt, Star Wars.
Yeah.
Of course, the man behind the legacy sound. Exactly.
Yeah.
He uses so much animal source as well, and like
Yeah,
the TIE fighters and all these kinds of different elements. So I mean, this stuff just lends itself to it so well.
Yeah, and it's always funny to kind of try and, not funny, but it makes the job more fun to try and put something on the picture that shouldn't really belong and then somehow crack that next thing that hasn't been done before, which he did over and over and over and over it on just the first, kind of first go. So it's really cool to try and do that. This is, oh man, I'm not gonna be able to pronounce this. It's another type of caracara, let's say. I would say this is the type of sound that pitches the worst to me because it makes me feel like what I've recorded was a human voice at this speed, kind of like not even that well, and then I sped it up to be. Every time that I record an animal that kind of pitches down in a way that feels human, it makes me feel kind of strange because I think, oh, okay, so like a human can actually imitate the sound pretty well if they could pitch themselves up. Maybe we can take a look at this one, finishing on a funny one, because a secretary bird, it looks almost like a crane, I suppose, in terms of size at least, but it sounds so weirdly deep. And I guess you can play with pitch for this one too. And this is kind of funny because at this point it feels like you've recorded like the Blue Man Group kind of instrument.
Yeah, it's like a tube. You can hear like the tube and the sound kind of, I don't know, bouncing off of it. It's really physical in that sense.
Exactly. It doesn't really feel like an animal sound when you slow it down. Like you hear here and you're like, I can borderline believe that this is an animal.
Yeah.
But when you slow it down, you're like, this is not an animal slowed down, 100%. Like if I had to put money on it, I would say this is not an animal slowed down. This is like a pipe.
Nice.
That's pretty much that. Of course, like at the top here, you can see the evenings that I have yet to spend finishing this up.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the idea. So sometimes I will slim down the sessions a little bit. However, this was mostly bird focused, and birds are fairly easy to work with. So when you look at what is on these tracks, you're rarely gonna find a D-room instance or something that really needs to do major surgery or fairly convoluted processing. So we have a lot of stereo alignment, WNS, which maybe is the heaviest thing of the bunch, and Pro L generally on the parent of the 5 mics. But it stays fairly simple. So when I can, I'll do this so that I can kind of stay in the flow and go back to back on all of the animals, and I can also go back and forth. I generally like the idea of cleaning things up with one animal in a Rex while I master another animal in Reaper so that I can keep myself flip-flopping in between editing and mastering kind of mindset and not get tired of either.
Interesting. And in terms of the session workflow, do you separate them? I can see here they're based on the recording days and locations. So is that how you tend to do it? And then do you bring them out into a master session, or do you simply export them and then have them in folders for your library?
Yes, so when it comes to the content, the recorded content will go into an audio folder. Well, I will have either the MixPre folder if it's, I will name it as such only if it's one of the recorders that I'm bringing. Otherwise, I know that it is the MixPre 10.2, so I'm just gonna drop the recorded audio folder directly from there. And then I will just have my editing folder here. The audio files that I'll find in here are only the glued files that I am RXing. Okay. So I try to separate it that way. I never want to do destructive editing right off the bat on the recorded content from the MixPre. So I generally glue for that purpose. I also glue because I want to work on either stereo files for the 8040s or mono files for 8050, Sunken, etc. And that is because I want to be able to see the full, spectrum rather than a number of channels that all of a sudden have a different size on the screen and are a little bit harder to work with. And finally, we have a video section here, which I will use to kind of drop, iPhone footage, GoPro footage, etc. Nice. So that's kind of the idea. We'll just kind of be dropped all there. And then there will be a render folder within the editing folder where I will put all of the mastered files, pending metadata, pending final RXing. But generally the RXing happens as soon as I export it. I will just kind of evaluate if there's any leftover problem. Sometimes you have maybe a resonance that is consistent enough that you don't want to drop Pro Q on every item or every track because you don't want it to act all the time. You just want it to act where you can actually hear the issue. Like if a bird makes a loud sound and then it kind of ends a little bit quieter, and on the tail you can almost hear the issue, that's where I generally fix it, just so that I can kind of call it a day and say, okay, it's, yeah.
Cool, amazing. And then from that rendered out folder, once you have all the masters and everything, goes into your sound library folder and then package up. And then that's it pretty much, right?
That's it for the raw section. That's it. Yeah, I will probably drop everything in another master session in Reaper, just mostly for balancing purposes when it comes to loudness and when it comes to spectral content, meaning, some birds like the owl that we just listened to, they are high frequency focused. Yeah. So you can't say, well, compared to a lion, it's lacking the lows. So I need to kind of, crank up whatever is in that region until I see the same color in a Rex. It's not that, of course. You're just kind of like comparing, like, if I am listening to this on speakers, will the owl be deafening if I crank up the lion to a point where it feels satisfying? Because the lion is full spectrum, so we'll clip sooner. And arguably, if you make the owl normalized it to the same loudness, it will probably kill your ears. So it's mostly that kind of thing and finishing touches, so to speak. But other than that, maybe sometimes comparison about room resonances, just in case a file was borderline exported because I thought, okay, maybe it does work, but then with fresh ears, all of a sudden you hear it in the context of the library and you say, no, actually the sound is pretty indirect, it's too wet, I think I need to let it go. And sometimes that means that the file gets marked, at least in the session, for future usage in case, with the AI developments and whatnot, a tool comes out that can do a better job than the tools that I have at my disposal right now. Yeah. Or maybe I get better and I figure out a better way to resuscitate the file, so to speak.
Makes sense.
Whew, those demos were awesome. We're nearly at the end, but before we wrap up, I wanted to leave you with a beautiful clip of Mattia talking about why he keeps coming back to animal libraries and what he loves about this process.
The whole creative endeavor is something that is meant to make you feel uneasy, and you go through it with that kind of like sense of, yeah, I'm gonna say yes, I'm gonna walk into this, although like a good chunk of me doesn't want to, because I know that I need that discomfort to create growth and then go from there and get better and better. I think it really matters to me, and it really speaks to why I do these animal libraries, because again, it is about the challenge and the fact that the challenge doesn't end. There's no, I feel, very little sense of mastery over this type of content, whereas with electrical elements or explosions, I felt like I got something that made me feel a little bit more adequate at making that, whereas animals is still like, I feel like you're panicking through the editing and you get the thing done and you're like, okay, it's over, next one. And you can't like take the approach that you just used on a bird and apply it to anything else, even if the next thing is a bird, because of the nuances and differences and what the challenge is. Sometimes you need to ask yourself, but why like the extra mile, etc. And it is because anyone can do this technically. So it's just good to kind of try and keep yourself sharp, I suppose.
I'm on my way to the central station again. Now the trip is over. It was so fun, really amazing time. Learned a bunch. And yeah, hopefully smooth journey back home to the UK again. What a great time. I feel creatively refreshed and rejuvenated. It's been intense, but really fun. And 10 out of 10 experience, really. Thanks again to Mattia and his family for inviting me, making this happen. just absolutely incredible.
Hey friends, thank you so much for sticking around. It really means a lot. A ton of work went into this project, and it would be amazing if you could share it with someone who you think might be interested in it. If you want to learn more about game audio, then check out gameaudiolearning.com. It's a great portal with lots of resources. And if you want to connect with me, ask some questions, and hang out with other awesome audio folks, then go visit airwiggles.com. More videos coming soon, stay wiggly, and see you in the next one.